Okay, let's continue part 2 of our little story started yesterday. Vassily Ivanchuk had just lost a game on time. He forgot about his clock against Karakin in the previous round to this, and now he's paired with black against Magnus Carlsen, who up until this point I don't believe has lost a game. So Magnus playing white plays d4. Ivanchuk plays knight f6, and after c4 we have the potential start of the Nimzo-Indian defense. And in fact we do, because after knight c3 we get the Nimzo-Indian defense, bishop b4, pinning that knight, putting pressure on the e4 square. White plays knight f3, and the pin is made use of. Very direct move now, knight e4. Okay, after queen c2, f5, just supporting that knight. Very interesting variation here. And you may have been off-put to play this f5. You know, maybe you think it's a liability, but we're going to see in this game how this diagonal, if the bishop fianchettos, doesn't have to actually prompt black to play d5. We're going to see that very interesting point here about to be demonstrated. After g3, b6, okay, bishop g2, bishop b7. You might think, isn't this, you know, a liability potentially? This is a potential pin across the diagonal. So, and now that pin is kind of made use of with knight d2. So even if black does inflict the doubled pawns, you know, what about this e4 knight? Is black going to be forced to play d5? Well, actually no. After bishop takes c3, doubling white's pawns, guess what black plays in this position? If I give you 10 seconds starting now. Okay, nifty little move, knight d6, just defending the bishop, challenging white's bishop. Magnus declines an exchange. He plays d5, which gives up the c5 square. Okay, but it putting more pressure on f5. That queen striking f5, but at the moment d6 is holding up f5. Knight a6, heading for that cozy c5 square. Both sides now castle. And then bishop a3. Black's not worried about getting double pawns there for sure, because imagine the c-file pressure, the amplification of c5 control. He just plays queen f6. And now Magnus plays e4, which doesn't really threaten e5 yet. Black's got that under control, and it also allows f4, seemingly dangerous move, because potentially f3 is going to be a problem. And is black going to play e5 and get a kind of King's Indian style pawn storm, well, without fianchetto bishop, but locking up the position anyway, would surely emphasize white's double pawns here. Rook ab1, rook ae8. I think black's got a cozy looking position myself here. After queen d3, e5, locking down the position. Looks very, very pleasant for black, this position right now. Okay, knight b3, as though c5 is going to justify white's play, this breakthrough c5. So I guess one of the points, it's going to be difficult for black to do anything about c5, but he just plays knight b8, which introduces potential for, you know, bishop a6 later. Bishop takes d6 is played in this position. Okay, so what's going on here? Can white actually play c takes, or is there some sort of nasty pin on b6 being exploited in this position? Ivanchuk actually played queen takes d6, but let's investigate c takes d6. It's probably something to do with knight a5, I guess. If c takes d6, actually that's given us a move, a possible move. It's not a big deal. It's still not a big deal. Maybe knight a5, okay, bishop a6. It's not a big deal. Okay, so in the game there were choices there. It's about the same actually from an engine point of view. Okay, so let's stop that, carry back into the game. So c5, queen f6. So there's a threat now of f3 getting more space maybe. c4, d6, and this bishop can actually return to this diagonal, which would make f3 more dangerous, squashing that bishop back on h1. White plays c6 anyway, inviting bishop c8. Okay, and now we see c5. For the moment, after c5, okay, Magnus is content having a squashed bishop on h1, actually. If he had moved this rook, you know, then fg is putting pressure on f2, unless he wants to play queen g3. But he doesn't seem to mind after f3, bishop h1. It looks pretty bad, the bishop on h1, at the moment. And after bishop a6, in fact, okay, White's losing the exchange now. It doesn't look great. Bishop takes, rook takes, and now b takes c5. But there is a point here that this knight can't get back into the centre because of this pawn. Okay, knight d2, and is black going to lose this pawn next? After knight a6, well, the knight is stumbling back to be relevant to the game now. Queen a3, knight b4. So is it going to get knight c2 to d4? Queen b3. It seems White's play is a bit shaky here and a bit kind of, it looks almost indecisive. Okay, he's stopping knight c2 now. Okay, now comes rook b8, harassing the queen. Potentially the queen goes to c4 now. Okay, and in this position, is White going to, you know, just take that pawn on f3? Well, this is very, very interesting now. Black actually plays queen g5, believe it or not. Okay, so he's inviting knight takes f3. And guess what Vassily Ivanchuk plays in this position? If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, an exchange sack. Rook takes f3. It gives access to the d2 square, which is pounced on now. Queen d2, and you can imagine a knight coming to d4 would be very, very powerful and centralized. Okay, alternatively, the knight can have other ambitions as well. After a3, another ambition is demonstrated, actually, not just knight c2. In fact, there might be a question mark over knight c2 because of rook d1. In the game, knight d3 was played. Let's just quickly check that out. Knight d3 appears to be the strongest move. If knight c2, I think, okay, rook d1, there's knight takes a3 tactically. So maybe, okay, there's other moves. Okay, but knight d3 seems to be the high precision move here. Okay, so knight d3, putting pressure on f2. Maybe also knight e1 is on the cards. Also rook b1 might be on the cards to deflect the rook. You know, away from f2, because then major disasters could occur. So anyway, bishop g4 is played here. In this position, that's kind of different now that the bishop's no longer going to be impris on f3 to some sort of tactic. Actually, rook f8 puts the attention back on f2 now. f3, and now g6. So what is the situation here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Equal on pawns, but the queen and knight very dangerous. Slightly higher quality pieces perhaps. So queen b5, and now another seemingly very, very clever move is played in this position. c4. So what is the idea of c4? Can it not just be taken? Magnus played queen b7. Let's just check queen takes c4 here. Queen b7 is actually, it seems all very bad after c4. In this position, it seems c4 is the strongest move. But what is it? What is it exactly doing? So let's examine queen takes c4. So all of a sudden here, rook b8 is mega powerful. I think the reason why this is mega powerful now compared to the other position is this f3 has weakened the second row, which means rook b2 is a lot more powerful and effective than just earlier. If we look at earlier, it was no big deal. This move, rook b8. The rook's already on b8. Rook b2 is no longer a big deal. But once this f3 was prompted, that's like a whole quite earth-shattering damage in chess terms to prompt f3. So rook b8 here was actually a good strike apparently in this position. So imagine check here, but the back row is a bit tied down. Check c4, trying to get the queen back to get time maybe for rook b2. If the queen came back here, then actually queen e2, and then there's knight f2 check, discover check. Alright, so in that position, okay, but here, okay, the damage has been done after rook f8, prompting that weakness, and you just need to get that b file, and so that's trying to maybe distract the queen then. Okay, so queen b7 was played, and now we see queen a5 defending c7, a7, and also maybe queen c5 check is useful. King g2 coming out of the firing line there. King g7. h4, h5, kicking the bishop to e6 now. And the king steps out of trouble with king h6. Okay. So, making maybe the queen less effective for queen takes c7, giving this queen a chance to do some damage. King h3, so they're mirroring each other's king movements. Queen d2, but it seems black might be striking first here with this knight and queen combination with knight f2. After queen takes c7, not knight f2 though, queen e2. And white carries on symmetrical movements here. Unfortunately, he's losing a rook first though, with queen e7. So why did Magnus have to give up the rook? Well, I think knight f2 is mating. If say rook g1, check, check, and it's going to be mating. So I think Magnus is busted actually here in this position. So he gives up his rook, which is not usually that healthy. Check. And this knight f4 basically rips down the f file with checks. So taking, and here Magnus resigned. He's going to lose all his pawns, and the queen and rook will mate the king. If, for example, here check, then the rook and queen will finish the white king off. Okay, a strange Nimzo-Indian game. It seems as though the Nimzo-Indian can be very exciting played like this. After knight c3, bishop b4, an immediate knight e4. So not really worrying about these fianchettoed bishop dangers for pressure along this diagonal. It seems the way Vassily played it had a certain ingenuity about it with this knight d6. Okay, so a fianchettoed knight is not bad because it's weakened white's light squares. So d5 weakens c5 though, and it also means that when black plays the move e5 eventually, it seems a very, very cozy position to have. c5 can be answered with knight takes, otherwise this pin would have had some significance. So knight b8. Okay, and after c5, queen f6, black just seems to, okay, he's experiencing a cramp on the queen side, but this exchange, for being the exchange up, gives the option for black to sacrifice the exchange, and still be materially okay. In this position, okay, the ingenious thing Queen G5, giving back the exchange, really does maximise black's pieces. If black didn't have this idea, let's just imagine, for example, that Queen G5 wasn't played here. Okay, it still seems black's better. Let's just give that token move. A3, that's actually trapping the knight. Actually, there's a threat immediately to trap the knight in any case. That's not an insignificant point. That's why Rook B6 is being prompted, or Queen F7. Actually, both of these ideas, or Queen H6, all three are to do with A3 being a threat at the moment. So Rook B6 gives Knight A6, Queen F7 gives Knight C6. So A3 is an immediate threat which had to be dealt with in any case to trap the knight. So giving back the exchange and sorting out that problem for the knight to be given the chance to hop around now. But it goes to D3, putting pressure on that F2, because black already has potential pressure on the F file with Rook F8, which he makes use of, causing a major weakness there on the second row. And now this is kind of ingenious, otherwise this pawn's really crashing through with the help of the knight and queen. But it also does some other stuff. Now here, actually, there isn't time for that pawn to do that, because of taking and check and Queen E7 will be dangerous. So instead, Queen A5, holding the fort, bringing the king to H6 kind of securely, and then going for white's king. And black lands the blows first. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much. Congratulations to Vassily Ivanchuk though, showing great strength of character. He had just lost the game on time prior to this game against Karakin in quite a good position. Not clearly winning, it was complicated, but he forgot about the clock. Remember, these are rapid games, 10-second increments, so to come back against Magnus Carlsen, the world #1, is absolutely brilliant, you know, to play like this, really fighting aggressive chess. Thanks very much.